Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and you can get more information, find out about other shows at our website, which is behind me, www.blainesworld.net. And we're just on Instagram now, so if you want to find us, you can find us. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. I'm a little bruised and beat up. I had a fall the other day, but I'm back and running, and that's a good sign. And even a better sign is the fact that we focus on really positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce Christi Hayes, who's program director for something called TIP, Trauma Intervention Program. And welcome aboard, Christi.
Thank you.
Okay, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching you. Okay, and I'm glad to have you on board. I know we spoke a while ago, but I'm really glad you're here now today because we have some news we want to share with people about how they can get involved in TIP as well. First, I should mention that Christi Hayes joined as a volunteer in January 2022, and then assumed the role of program director in April 2022. So that's kind of cool that you came on board and all of a sudden you wind up in a full-time, or not a full-time, but you wind up in this position.
Yeah, I started off as a volunteer and I've been doing it a couple of months when the program director position opened up.
Had that been your intention, just stay as a volunteer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, which if anybody's listening or watching, you should keep that in mind. Great way to get involved, find out about an organization, volunteer, and you never know what'll happen. Christi is also a graduate of Davidson College and University of North Carolina School of Law. Christi has served numerous nonprofits in various capacities for more than 30 years. That's pretty cool. You started what, when you were 7 or 8?
Started off in like middle school, high school, doing lots of volunteer stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was saying 30 years. You could have fooled me.
Oh, you were making an age comment.
I was trying to be but a nice age comment.
I'm older than I look.
Okay. She's been involved with Planned Parenthood, Dade County Bar Association, Miami Gay Men's Course, Roxy Boston Rape Treatment Center, Jackson Memorial Hospital, Hampton, Miami, and Coral Gables Congregational Church. She's been a member of the Florida Bar for over 30 years and taught at both the University of Miami Business School and Florida International University College of Law. After 30 years in Miami, she returned to a native North Carolina in 2021, now happily calls Asheville home. She has 2 adult children, Macy and Eli, is it?
Mm-hmm.
And 2 rescue dogs, Shaggy and Phoebe. So the question, first of all, as a child, you grew up where?
In North Carolina, not Western North Carolina, but.
Okay. And so when you grew up in North Carolina, did you always know you wanted to be involved in nonprofit organizations?
No, I didn't. I thought I wasn't sure what I wanted to be for a long time, and I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And then I tried that, and I did it for a few years, but it didn't feed my soul. And I found out when I was a lawyer that the things that I really enjoyed doing were things that were in the community and various nonprofit projects I was doing.
Also, then, when you were a lawyer, were you also teaching at a university level, or was that after?
It was after. I practiced law for a couple of years after law school, and then started teaching at the university level in about 8 years later, I think.
So what got you then back to West North Carolina or to this area?
I had spent 30 years in Miami and I felt like I'd done my time.
Okay. And so
I was ready to start a new chapter, and I visited here and really loved Asheville.
you came to this area, what, 2022?
21.
21. And you didn't have a job, or did you know what you were going to be doing?
Nope, just decided to start a new chapter and figure it out.
Okay. And so TIP was the first organization you really got involved in here?
Mm-hmm. I had done some other stuff that I was trying to find a good opportunity to volunteer with. I did the training to be a foster parent, and then came to the conclusion that that wasn't the right commitment for me right now. And I was also doing training to be a hospice volunteer, and also reached that same conclusion. Just looking into a couple of other things, and then I basically tripped over an advertisement on Facebook for TIP that the training was starting within a couple of days, and I put on my mask and went and joined the training. It was still in the middle of, when everything was shut down.
And by the way, your experience is kind of cool, and other people should keep that in mind, that there's nothing wrong with trying out something and then finding out it's not for you. That, I mean, I give you credit that you did the training, you could have volunteered, but you were looking for the right opportunity. Why was TIP the right opportunity for you?
What I like about TIP is the way that the volunteers are able to give direct service to people in need, people in like an intense need at that moment. We're able to serve a purpose that no one else can serve. I'll talk to you more about what our volunteers do, but when we're needed, we jump in the car and go. And we're there within like half an hour, usually, of when someone is called 911. So we are in the middle of a really, really traumatic situation for a person, and our volunteers, when they get there, are trained to actually help those people. Some of the other volunteer opportunities were a little more just they didn't have that kind of satisfaction, and they didn't have that kind of feeling of, wow, can I really do this? Is this something that people do? I also have a certain degree of comfort around death and dying. I've had a lot of personal experiences with loved ones who I've been privileged to be with near or at the end of life. And I also took a course during the pandemic, and I'm an end-of-life doula. A lot of people are familiar with the word doula as a birth doula, but they're also end-of-life doulas. So one helps people into the world and one helps people out of the world by providing support around end of life.
So taking that, let's just back up a little bit. So I think I'm getting the idea of what the program is all about, but for those people not familiar with it at all, if you come as a volunteer, you're volunteering to do what exactly?
our volunteers are trained to provide emotional and practical support to people in the community who have just suffered a sudden tragedy. So we're actually, my volunteers are actually requested at scenes where something has just happened and a person has called 911. Our volunteers are requested by firefighters or EMTs or law enforcement on the scene. When they get to a scene where someone's experienced a traumatic loss and they feel like a TIP volunteer could effectively assist that person, they will ask for a volunteer, and one of our dispatchers gets a page, and then we dispatch whoever the volunteer is on duty to go and provide that kind of support for the person. And I can talk more about what that is, but we have volunteers available 24/7, 365. So a police officer, firefighter, anybody who's in any situation at all where they think, wow, I could use a TIP volunteer, they can have one within like half an hour in Buncombe or Henderson County, anywhere.
I was going to ask you, so that's pretty kind of exciting that all these people know about you then, or at least the police know about you and the fire department knows about you.
Oh,
And
they don't just know about us, they call us, they appreciate us, they're big fans.
I was going to ask you that. So that's neat also that they're big fans. Do they don't ever complain that you're getting in the way or you're interfering with what they're doing?
No, the ones who call us again and again and again. They see that our volunteers are highly trained and they don't do that. We're trained to stay out of their way and let them do their job.
Well, you're raising a good point too, in that I guess the reality is that if you're dealing with a fire or whatever emergency you're dealing with, you're pretty busy with just taking care of that, as opposed to having to take care of people. And so the folks you take care of, is that the whole family or is it kids or what's the age range of people you take care of?
Our volunteers never know what they're going into when they get a call. Sometimes we go to the home of a senior who has just lost their, spouse or caretaker. So it may be an elderly person whose husband or wife of many years has just died. And sometimes that person was their caretaker. So sometimes it's an unexpected senior death and there may be just one person there. It may be that person doesn't have anybody else or that those people are on their way and they haven't arrived yet. We also go to scenes where we have multi-generational families who are dealing with a loss. And my most recent call, I think I had like 8 people in the house, and it was 3 generations from a 10-year-old up to, a 70-year-old. And so we can have multiple people. We also get called sometimes to crime scenes or scenes where there's been motor vehicle accidents. And in those cases, there might be, 40 or 50 people on scene. Sometimes there's a crime that happens and you end up with 25 people at the hospital, friends and family of someone who's been shot. So we never know where we're going or how many people will be there, how old they will be. We have to be open to anything.
Do you ever go out as a team or is it just the one person all the time?
We have 2 teams of husband and wife and they go out together. The rest of us generally go out by ourselves on a call, unless it's a call that we could use more than one person. We always have one person on call, at least one person. Sometimes we have 2 people on call. So if someone gets to a scene and there's more going on there than they feel like they could handle. So for example, I might get somewhere on a call and I'm helping an adult, but there are also 2 young children there, and I can't help that person because they're busy helping, crying children who are upset and don't understand what's going on. So I can call in another volunteer to come and help so that we can, occupy children and then also help the adults.
Whereas you mentioned you get to a situation where you have 10 people involved or 20 people involved. That's a lot for one person to handle. Can people call you directly? You mentioned they have to go through one of the others.
Yes, all of our calls come in from people who are on the front lines responding to emergency calls. So firefighters, EMTs, and paramedics and law enforcement. And so when they want us, they actually call 911 or, their back channel to that. They call communications and say, get us a tip volunteer. And then 911 is how the call comes to us.
Okay. So describe then the process then in which somebody becomes a volunteer. So one of the things you mentioned to me off the line, off the air, we have an upcoming training session for volunteers. Right now, you have how many volunteers approximately?
I have about 24 now.
Okay, and they've been with you for a period of time?
The newer ones have been with us for about 6 months. Some of them, we have one volunteer who's been with us since we launched in Western North Carolina, which was 2015.
Okay, so they then, if somebody wants to sign up and as a result of today's program, what do they do next, or how do they sign up?
And they can visit our website, which is tipofwnc, tipofwnc.org. There's information there at the website about how to sign up for training and the specific dates of the training. They can also call our office number, which is 828, I want to make sure I give you the right number, 513-0498. And that I answer those calls. If they get voicemail, they'll get a call back. That's our office number. They can also visit our Facebook page that has a flyer with all of those dates and everything posted on it.
So they contact you, they sign up for the training. What then is next?
We have people come for the first night, as sort of an orientation, sit through the first night of training, and then make sure at the end of the night that this is something they want to commit to, because it is a big commitment. The training is a big commitment. It's more than 50 hours. And then new volunteers make a commitment to volunteer to be on call at least 3 12-hour shifts a month. So they can pick daytime or evening, but they have to take that much of a workload. And for those shifts, when they're on call, it means they have to be available to jump in a car at a moment's notice and go anywhere in Buncombe or Henderson County. So they might get a call, they might get 2 calls in their shift. They might not get any calls at all, but they're supposed to be ready to go. They can't be, in the grocery store or at work or, anywhere where they're tied up with something else. They need to be able to get in the car and go.
And so the training then they sign up for, what does that involve? What do they learn?
It's nights and weekends over a period of 10 days. The next one is starting on February the 28th, running through March 9th. And it is training in emergency scenes, emergency systems, how first responders work, grief and trauma, what that looks like, what people's needs are, and the way that other TIP affiliates have found to be the most effective way of interacting with people who have experienced a sudden trauma. In a sense, we're a bridge to what comes next, because this trauma has just occurred. We're a bridge to them getting past those first couple of hours until maybe their normal support system kicks in. Maybe the following week or month, they're going to get to a grief therapist, but there's not a therapist there with them. There's nobody there except a first responder. And that's how we're able to go and support them. Anybody who's ever suffered a sudden tragedy, usually involving a loss of someone, sometimes you can't even function. Sometimes, the people we go to support, they are just not even functioning. They're either overwhelmed with the shock of what's happened, having an emotional breakdown, which is normal, or they're not functioning at all because they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say, and they're sort of shut down to protect themselves. One of the reasons the organization was founded was research shows that a lot of times after people experience a sudden tragedy, years later, they're still dealing with trauma around that isn't necessarily the loss of the loved one, but something happened around that loss. So there are things that can happen immediately after a tragedy that can sort of go into the memory bank and cause a secondary trauma that can cause people long-term mental health issues. So I like to say my volunteers are human bubble wrap. So they go in and they wrap around a person who's very vulnerable. So we might make sure that the person has had something to eat. A lot of times things happen in the morning. Have you eaten? If it's an elderly person, do you normally take medication that maybe you haven't taken this morning? What do you need right now? You know, help them make phone calls or help them secure their belongings. Sometimes people are in a parking lot or they're out in the street and, you know, they're not in their home. Sometimes they're in their home, but sometimes they're other places. And there could be any number of different circumstances about where they find themselves. If it's really hot, I get them water and sunscreen and a hat. If it's really cold, I'm going to get them a blanket, try to protect them from whatever elements they might be in, and provide certain comfort measures, but also I know what to look out for that could cause additional stress, that could make it worse for people. There's not a lot you can say or do right then, but there's a lot of wrong things people can say and do.
As you're mentioning this, so I'm just thinking out loud with you that these are things I guess most people in normal state of mind take for granted, but in your experiencing trauma, you're not thinking normally, you know, and just listening to this, I mean, it seems like this tremendous value, not only to the firefighters and the police, but also the folks involved who are getting this service. What's the reaction you get from both ends?
People are really grateful that we're there. They don't quite know who we are after the fact. They're
Right.
like, who was that guy? Who was that man? I wouldn't have made it through the day without him, but I don't even know who he was, because when the first responders call us on a scene, they introduce us to the person and they
Right.
just say, you know, this is Blaine. He's a volunteer and he's here to be with you for what comes next. They don't go into last name or training or the organization or anything. It's just, this is Blaine and he's here to help you. And people just generally, you know, say, okay, and interact with us for more or for less. You know, sometimes there's a lot of interaction, sometimes there's less, but our main goal is to just reach out and be physically present with someone and let them know we're not in a uniform. We don't have a job to do. We're not with law enforcement. We're not medical. We don't work for the government. We are there for them to help them with what they're going through immediately.
So you mean
So
if I'm a volunteer, I don't get a badge either? I don't get,
we have a badge.
oh,
I
do
thought
you?
we had one, but we have a very unofficial badge. It's a red like pocket that hangs here that has an ID in it,
Yeah.
and that alerts law enforcement or firefighters when we get to a scene. They go, oh, there's the tip volunteer. They're used to recognizing that, and we keep our business cards in there. So then we give the person we're helping a business card. So our role is to be physically present for them, to provide actual physical support. You know, we put our hand on their back if it's okay with them, or we might offer a hug, or, you know, if it's a child, maybe, you know, more physical attention than that if it's welcome. But we reach out physically, we reach out emotionally, we look around to see who might be suffering in a situation that it's not always the person making the most noise. It's not always the person who seems like they would be the most affected by what's happened. It might be someone else. And we try to protect them from making impulsive decisions. So, you know, people are often asking you for things, or you might do things in that sense of trauma that you would regret doing later. And we try to protect people from doing that. So, for example, in some cases, they'll have media show up, you know, and we let them know what their rights are, that they don't have to talk to the media, that they don't have to, you know, do certain things, and that they have rights. We reassure them that whatever they're feeling, it's normal. That, you know, this is different for everybody, but we reassure them that whatever they're going through, because sometimes people don't cry. And then they say, what's wrong with me? My child drowned and I'm not crying. Well, that's normal in the immediate aftermath of a shocking accident. Just like our bodies go into physical shock, our brains go into mental and emotional shock, and that really protects us from what's happened for a little bit. So whatever people are feeling, we reassure them that that's normal. We help them get organized. So we can help them make a list of things they need to do once the time for that comes. If there are people they need to call or reach, sometimes they don't have access to a phone, or they can't find phone numbers, or they can't reach someone. We can help them do that. If they,
You get
if they
involved,
need
do you ever get involved with their pets? You know, when
with
you
their
come in?
pets,
Yeah.
yeah, we do. One of the things we find is that if we're comforting someone and there's a pet there, it's one of the most helpful tools we can use, because people get so much comfort from their animals. And in some cases, though, there's nobody there to care for the animals,
Right.
and we might need to connect them with a local shelter or something like that. So yeah, we absolutely do help with whatever practical needs they have. If they need a funeral home, we provide information for them and help them call the funeral home and make those arrangements. And if a funeral home is coming, we normally stay until that happens and stay with the person until that's finished and their loved one is removed, because that is particularly traumatic thing that can happen. And so we want to protect.
How long do you stay with the person? Is it just that day, that night, or is there ever a follow-up afterward?
We stay anywhere from, I'd say, 45 minutes to 8 hours, I think, is the longest call I know of. It's just that day. It's the immediate aftermath of the tragedy that's happened. Our volunteers sometimes make a follow-up call the next day, and if they've made a connection with someone and the person says it's okay for them to call, they'll call and say, I just wanted to check in, see if there's anything else we could do for you. They also can follow up with me. I'm the only employee. They're not going to have an ongoing relationship with those volunteers, but they can call me at any time, and I can help refer them to resources. So for example, the next day, someone in the family may be having a mental health crisis. I can help them know who to call. They may, their loved one may have been taken away and they don't understand where they went or what they need to do next because someone told them, but they don't remember because things were so crazy. I can help them with that. Sometimes we have people visiting from out of town. They're here on vacation and something terrible happens and they've got practical issues of getting back to where they came from or finding a place to stay. If someone's had a fire, we can help connect them with resources that, support people after a fire, someone come board up their home or that sort of thing. We really just help them through both the emotional impact and some of the practical impact of what's happened to them. We also have a community resource guide that we update all the time that has just about every resource you could think of in the community, Buncombe and Henderson County, for someone who has experienced a tragedy. So there's lots of grief and bereavement resources here and references to other things you can find other places, and also phone numbers for, every hospital and law enforcement agency and funeral home. And
For that guide, is that available online or can they get a
is.
copy of it?
It is.
So what, go to the website
Mm-hmm.
and what, they can download a copy?
TIP of WNC.org. They might not want to download a whole copy because
Right.
this printed copy is it's about 60 pages,
Right.
but it's on there and they can find anything they want. All the information that's here is available on our website.
Now, what's so, I think, valuable about the service you provide is it's one thing if people have family in the area and have an extended family, but unfortunately there are a lot of people in Buncombe County, Henderson, you name it, who have no family or just by themselves. And I guess I won't say it is a big problem of loneliness. You have so many people have tragedy strike, and do you have that happen? Do you find that they have nobody there with them?
All the time.
Yeah.
A lot of senior citizens, but also younger people too, that, we have some people, they're very low income and they're living as a couple and maybe they've, just sort of gotten their bearing. They've found a place to rent that they can afford and they're both working a job and they really don't have a lot of family connections. And then one of them suddenly dies and the other one is completely bereft. Maybe they're new to Asheville.
Right.
And they need that second income to make ends meet. So you've got someone whose partner has suddenly unexpectedly passed away. And, you're also worried about paying your rent tomorrow and you don't have any family anywhere, any connections or anybody to get you through that trauma. And so we're just there for that immediate aftermath, but often we can help people get to that place where they're thinking more clearly and help them think about what their options are and get them through that initial period where they're so vulnerable.
In terms of volunteers, I'll ask you two questions. One, is there an age limit or age range you're looking for volunteers?
We can train volunteers as young as 16. We have a teen program, and if we are able to recruit people for that, we'll do a training for teens. They have to go out with an adult when they go out on a call. We don't have a teen affiliate operating right now in Western North Carolina. We're a relatively small affiliate, but we're part of a national network. There are 14 other affiliates, mostly on the West Coast, California, and Pacific Northwest area. And some of those bigger programs that have, 4 or 5 times as many volunteers as we have here, they have really active teen programs where they have, people as young as 16 who have been trained to provide this kind of support.
And how about the age range? So you have to be over 16 to volunteer. to be by yourself over 18? Is there an age limit?
Probably 21 to go out
21.
on your own in most cases,
Okay.
probably 21.
And then 21, what's the oldest volunteers you have? Can you be any age?
We've just had an 83-year-old retire from volunteering.
Wow, very nice.
I think we've had two 83-year-olds recently, actually, who volunteered with us for about 2 years, each of them, before they had issues that they needed to, to attend to. But, great volunteers.
Describe, if you would, the perfect volunteer. If you were trying to find one, describe that person.
Well, the great thing about the program is that anyone can do it. You don't need any special educational or professional background. You don't have to be a mental health professional. You just have to care about people and be willing to make the commitment that's necessary to be a volunteer. So, we've had young people who are college students or, working in the restaurant industry as servers or bartenders. We've had those people come and volunteer with us. And then we've had, people who are actively working, and then, who can, like, if they work days, they can take night shifts or vice versa. And then we have a lot of people who are sort of past their, they've retired or they're no longer working. They've come here from another place, but they still are very engaged in, in life and the community, and they want to do that. I find that a lot of our volunteers have either experienced some sort of trauma in their own life that makes them extra sensitive to people like this, or that they come from the caring professions. They're doctors, they're nurses, they're social workers. They're just really caring people. But our training gives a volunteer all the tools they need to do what we do. And everybody's terrified before their first call. And, am I ready? Can I do this? And almost every single one of them afterwards, they go, was that a setup? Because that call was exactly what you told me would happen. And I did all the stuff you told me to do in training, and I feel really good. Like, was that a fake call? Was that a role play? Because we equip people to actually, know what to expect and go in and apply the tools that we've given them.
It must be very rewarding then to be a volunteer. First of all, you said they've been with you several years. And it's just, I can imagine that, people don't realize that volunteering and helping others, but it's also great for the person doing volunteering. Do they get a tremendous sense of what value out of this?
Absolutely. My volunteers, the ones who are still actively volunteering and the ones who have had to move on, say it's one of the best experiences of their lives. We're going to places where most people, aren't allowed to go. So we'll go to the scene of an accident or a crime, and there's yellow tape all around, and, law enforcement is holding people back, and they lift that tape and tell us to come on in. They've called and asked for us to be there. And that's a real privilege to be invited into, a situation like that, first responders usually trying to keep a scene really intact, and they don't want, civilians there. They call and ask for our volunteers to come and then welcome us in and introduce us to the person needing our support. So people are really aware that that's a privilege to be able to be with someone in that time and to be welcomed by first responders.
And last question, Chrissy, in terms of volunteers, do you have any people who are volunteers or come forward as volunteers you had helped a year ago or 5 years ago, or they've been helped by the TIP program and they got so much out of it that they came back to volunteer themselves? Have you had that?
I think we've had two people in that circumstance. Generally, people need to be a couple of years past their
Sure.
own tragedy to be able to help other people. So I think we've had two here in Western North Carolina. We've only been operating in Buncombe County since 2015, and we expanded to all of Henderson County in 2022. So we're pretty young here. We've only been operating since 2015. So in other affiliates where they've been operating, the first one started in 1985. They've been going for decades. Lots of people in San Diego know about TIP. Lots of people who have been helped by TIP come back and become TIP volunteers.
And to come out to volunteer, this upcoming training session, where does it actually take place?
The next training session is going to take place at AB Tech at their facility in Woodfin. We generally try to have our meetings and our trainings equally convenient to people from Henderson or Buncombe County. Part of that, if we get people from Henderson County, we may have half of that training closer to them. But right now it's scheduled to take place at the AB Tech. It's the public safety training. It's where they train firefighters and police.
Okay.
It's part of the college campus. So the other point I want to make about my volunteers, who are the most fantastic people I've ever known, because they're giving so selflessly to a total stranger. And there are not many people who are willing to jump out of bed in the middle of the night, and they pay for their own gas. They go out alone. They might go out multiple times on a shift, or they may just be alert and vigilant for months on their shifts and never get called out, but they drive their own vehicle, they pay for their own gas, and they go out alone to a stranger's, home or business, or maybe a parking lot or somewhere. And they're always first responders on scene. Our volunteers can only go out if there's someone there and their safety is assured. But it takes a special person to go out and help a stranger like that for no recognition. We send out a feedback request after our calls. A few weeks later, we get feedback. We ask for feedback both from the responder who requested us and who we interacted with on the scene, and also from the client that we served, if we have their contact information. We get back great feedback from our first responders, how grateful they are that our people are so well trained and willing to come and be there in these circumstances where we're so valuable. But the people that we've served will write back and they say things like, I wondered who that angel was. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have gotten through the day without that person. Thank you for, because we'll say, Susan was the volunteer who was with you that day. Was it helpful? Is there anything else she might have done to help you? And it's just very brief. And we get back basically love letters saying, oh my God, Susan changed my life forever. It was the worst day of my life. And if Susan hadn't been there, I don't know how I would have gotten through it.
So these people are real angels, and especially as you mentioned to me, we had talked one other time that they do this 24/7. You never know when it's going to be needed.
We're available 24/7. We have at least one volunteer on call all the time. A volunteer is on call for a 12-hour shift. That's when they have to be available, and they get to choose those shifts. But it would be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And during that 12 hours, they are, the volunteer or one of two volunteers, they are on alert to go immediately to a call if requested.
And to remind everybody, if folks are interested in, first of all, either the program itself or that tip booklet you mentioned, or to sign up for the training, best bet is to go to the website.
tipofwnc.org has all the information you need. You can click on training or get involved. You can click on donate if you'd like to, support the program. We operate on a shoestring. I'm the only staff member and I'm part-time. As you can see, my home is my office. My cell phone is my office. I use my own gas and, my own home as the office. So we don't have a lot of money and we are always looking for donations. We have a big fundraiser that will probably be in May. It's a fire truck pull. Maybe I can come back and talk to you then.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
People. We have teams of up to 12 people who come out and basically do a tug of war with a fire truck, a fully loaded fire truck with all the water on it and a giant rope. And these teams of 12 pull it to see who can pull it fastest for 100 feet. Well, and so the reigning champions are Asheville Police Department. They've won for the past couple of events.
Well, keep me in mind. I'd love to hear about it, or maybe even do a show, at the event itself.
Oh,
that's kind of that's kind of a fun thing.
That would be great.
The one other thing too I'm getting from this discussion is there's one other value to being a volunteer, and you also pick up a lot of other useful skills that you can use in life as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So not just in terms of dealing with the people involved in trauma, but just basic communication skills, or how to be nice to people or meet their needs. It seems training you're going to be able to use all your life in a variety of situations.
Well, one other thing that I wanted to mention that we do, if anybody who's listening is interested in these skills, maybe can't be a volunteer, but is really interested in the type of skills we're talking about, this emotional first aid, we offer training classes, and I will go out to any group that invites me to do a class in emotional first aid, anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours, 6 hours, to any group of people in a workplace or any type of group to help learn how to help emotionally injured people after a tragedy. A lot of it is unlearning our natural inclination. So, we've all tried to help somebody who's, sad or upset. And our inclination is to pat them on the back and say, it's going to be okay.
Right.
It's not going to be okay for these people. A lot of times people have tragedies and it's never going to be okay. That's not the right thing to say. It's not reassuring to someone. Patting someone on the back is what we do with an infant to make them stop crying. It's trying to make them stop, don't cry, don't cry. Well, if you're giving emotional first aid, you're letting someone react however they're naturally reacting and reassuring them that that's normal. And if they're falling apart, that's fine. If they're laying on the floor crying, I'm going to lay down on the floor next to them where they're crying and be there for them. But we help people unlearn those things because in some situations, there's nothing you can say to help. There are a lot of things you can say to hurt someone, to make it worse. There are lots of things that people just naturally say, some people are just really, furious if they're mourning a loss that's just happened in the last, hour or two. And someone says, well, God must have needed another angel.
Yeah.
Well, that is not something someone wants to hear when their loved one, may still be there on the premises, and has just died. That's not necessarily a helpful thing to say. If religion can be a big help to some people, but not to everyone, and there's a time and place for that sort of thing. But there are lots of things that people say that they don't validate people's grief and circumstances. So I'm happy to teach emotional first aid and help people sort of unlearn some of those instincts and learn how you can support people in distress, in your workplace or in the community or even in your own family.
Is that covered also in the 50-hour training as well?
Oh, yeah.
Emotional first. Great
That's
topic.
the heart of what we do is emotional first aid.
Okay. Anyway, I'd like to thank you for being my guest, Christi Hayes, and also thank you for the work you do with TIP, Trauma Intervention Programs. Hopefully we'll bump into you, if not sometime, maybe at that fire truck pull. You have to
I'll
let
be
me
in
know
touch.
about that. I also like to thank my producer, Cappy Tassetti, and we hope to see you somewhere down the road. But thanks for all you do for the community, Christi. That's
Thank
great.
you, Blaine. Thanks a lot.